Here we are. We are live once again. Welcome, everybody. I'm excited today, as I always am, but certainly today we have a lot of history here on media and marketing about all this digital stuff, right? We talk about paid, we talk about organic, we talk about business strategies in general, we talk about entrepreneurship. There's a lot here, but actually at the end of the day, there's a few things that I really like to talk about, and that is paid and organic. And today it's organic SEO, and my friend and expert is on the line, Steve Wiideman. How are you today?
Great, John. Thank you so much for inviting me too. I've been following some of your recent podcasts, and I'm like, oh, finally I get to jump in and pivot from Facebook and e-commerce to jumping into something that I love and I'm passionate about with it, which is organic SEO.
Yeah, and boy, you have a lot to share here. We're going to try and cover a lot in a fairly succinct time, but I know there's a lot more that folks can get from you. Of course, we'll cover that towards the end, where they can reach you, etc. But what I figured we'd do today is just start really from the top and kind of go through the basics, really to start. And one of the first questions would be out the gate, like, how did you get started? There's so many stories behind SEOs, and how do you even get into this business, right? Like, what was your background, and how did you kick things off? If you could start me there.
Yeah, that's a great question. A lot of us started by necessity. We were webmasters. We designed websites in Front Page or even Notepad back in the day, and we were helping small clients because we just really were fascinated by the internet. And then those clients, as they start paying you to work on their website, they get to a point where they're like, hey, this website's really pretty, but I'm not really getting any new business from it, and I can't keep paying you unless it's actually, benefiting my business. I mean, it looks great on my business card, but not really getting any sort of web traffic to it. And so out of necessity, you've got to do some research. You start searching around. Back then we're using Excite and Alta Vista and Yahoo, right? And we learned how to do some website promotion. Website promotion then starts to transfer into search engine optimization, which wasn't really even a name, right? It was just at the same time it was like what do we call it? It's just general internet marketing or website promotion. And so as we started to learn about that from each other, the Aaron Walls of the world and the Bruce Clays were pushing out everything that they were learning online. And so we'd all sort of learn from these pioneers. And from different case studies, I built a few different ebooks as a way for me to kind of keep my processes organized. I started breaking down things to technology, content, link building, right, which is kind of a faux pas term these days. And I just started to become more and more passionate. One day I get a postcard from a career college, and it says, hey, do you want to learn e-business management? And I'm like, do I? So while I was full-time at IBM Global Services back in the early 2000s, I jumped right into night school, got a degree in e-business management, and continue to pursue my passion for digital. And the rest is, as they say, it's history.
Wow, that's I didn't know that background. That's very interesting. And would you say that in some ways you kind of fell into it? You mentioned Aaron Wall, Bruce Clay, same thing here, awesome guys. And is there a certain personality or certain did you sort of see yourself naturally almost falling into this? Like, yeah, when you look back, yeah, I could see me, Steve. I was definitely sort of meant to do this, or was it just I was blown with the wind a little bit at that time?
I think I had read something somewhere that said you need to pick an industry where there's a high demand. And I was sort of being a futurist, I suppose, when I said, this internet thing, I bet it's really going to take off, right? And this is pre, the bubble of 2000. And I don't know, I think my brain just said, stick with it. It's going to result in something. In the same way that, my manager when I was at Disney kept telling me, hey, this SEO thing isn't really going to take off, and more people are focused on paid search. And I said, I disagree. I think people are going to search for SEO expert and some of these search terms that didn't have any volume back then. And then, 10 years later, I look back, I'm like, wow, look how much revenue I made by optimizing and ranking for these search terms, and it was all focused around, SEO expert back then and SEO consultant and that sort of thing. So yeah, I think it was really more me just thinking about how do I create a career for myself in a specialized industry where there's going to be a high demand and a limited market space. And between that and the idea of kind of who I had to become to accomplish that, I decided this is it. This is the way it's going to work for me, because I was a bit introverted. I was a programmer and doing some coding, and I love to stay up till 2 a.m. building websites and that sort of thing. But then I realized, you know what? I've also got to understand buyer psychology. I have to write pages for different users with different user intents. I can't just order an article off Textbroker. I have to write something meaningful that's helpful to my users and understand where they're at when they hit a certain page. And when they search for a certain word, does that mean they want information, they're ready to buy, or that they're comparing? And then I've got to also do some outreach, pick up the phone and not be afraid to say, hey, I really love your content. Can we collaborate in a way where, perhaps we share some things on social, and maybe you share something on my website from your blog, and without asking for links. So you go from this introverted personality to being able to understand buyer psychology, to being a little bit out there in the charismatic outreach world. So you sort of become multiple personality. You're introvert, you're content, and then your outreach. There's not many people that can do that. You're either kind of one or the other. You're either tech or you're marketing. You're not both. You don't really see that. So I decided, I've got to become both. So I put myself out there. I started one of Orange County's largest meetup groups and got in front of people. And I teach at the colleges and guest speak at the colleges now. And I'm not the introvert now. Now I'm somebody who can handle all of those different disciplines, which in any sort of job function is almost impossible. So that's why we're such a small niche, I believe, is that we're able to take on those different roles that are completely opposite of each other. And I love it. And it just become part of me. 20 years later, here I am.
Right. 20 years later, it's amazing, Steve. And what you're bringing up there is some really critical points, I think, to be aware of and recognize. Right brain, left brain, art and science. I mean, it's creative. Yes, it's technical, but there's a lot around this. Yeah, you mentioned buyer psychology and understanding, human behavior, and it gets rather expansive to. I've started at sort of that basic level, if you will, which we all start somewhere, right? And to get to where you are now, it's really nice. I've read a lot of your articles actually over the past, and it's very well written, and it speaks to exactly that, right? It's content that people actually want to consume, rather than, like you mentioned, text broker, just kind of spewing the content out there and letting it rip, and then of course eventually that's going to catch up with you. So I totally relate. Well, that's great. By the way, anybody in your family like entrepreneurial out the get-go, or no?
Not really. My parents, like my mom, did 30 years at Pacific Bell, so she was a lifer over there, which eventually became AT&T. I was just kind of taking a risk. My other family members, my cousins and aunts, all sort of choose a career path and they stick with it forever and work for some other company. I have one cousin in Seattle who did start his own private practice with his wife, which is pretty entrepreneurial. But for the most part, my family is very kind of conservative and traditional, and I'm sure they were a little worried when I said, "Hey, just guess what? I'm leaving the agency world and I'm going to go off my own and be a consultant." I'm like, "Oh, that's going to be scary. How are you going to pull that off? You've e-business experience and you can do website stuff, but you've never really been trained in any formal business management or leadership or even just any kind of management, people management." And I said, it's just something I have to do. I don't like the way that the agency world sort of takes advantage of of businesses. Back in the late 2000s, where businesses were naive to what search was, and agencies were charging 100 times what the actual hard cost of performing work was. So I just said, I want to do this for myself and for my family and get more time at home, and it all came together.
No, nice. Yeah, very good. It's not a straight line by any means. So congrats on all that.
Thank you.
In fact, we know there's struggles in business and in entrepreneurship, and pushing forward, pushing through is very important. And listening to this podcast, I know a lot of the folks are entrepreneurs, and when you have those tough days, you got to just keep an eye on the ball. So I appreciate that. And in fact, this leads into the next question here, which is, we talk about SEO strategies every day, right? I mean, it's like, what is the best way to approach this particular problem? And each website, each company is at a different stage in the life cycle. Somebody's maybe brand new, it's maybe an e-com type of situation, or more of a service-based one. There's local, there's national, there's international. This can get rather expansive in terms of the strategies and the discussion. So my question was, because there's also, like image optimization, there's books, there's the maps, as I mentioned, there's a lot of different strategies, but how do you approach, this is the question, how do you approach these problems out the gate to kind of get a baseline of, okay, here's where you're at, here's where we're going to take you, and here's why and how you can do these things, and also, of course, how you can help that. So I know it's kind of a big question, but I'll throw it out there right off the bat.
It's not that big of a question. So I would say the client needs analysis solves for a lot of the sort of, where are the problems? When you have that first call, you have them fill out your client fill out a form that breaks down all of the different things they've been doing in the past, where their challenges are, what their goals are they tracking KPIs, what software you're using, what CMS are you on? You capture a lot of that information, and then you take it all back and you use your experience in working with those different CMS systems and working with whatever those problems happen to be. And then you come up with a, sort of a proposal of here's where your primary issues are. We're going to make these the priority, but it's going to augment, our existing sort of baseline strategy that we do, that initial sort of foundation, to not do that, to skip through the standard technical audit and competitive analysis and link audit, to skip those things. Leaves room for problems down the road. Like, we did everything, we fixed everything. Why are we still struggling? And then you go and you do a link audit, and you're like, oh, I see, you've got a toxic link problem you didn't tell us about. Or, oh, I see what's going on the tech side. You're cloaking, 300 domains that you purchased. And so I think it's sort of fundamental to make sure that you are doing that out the gate strategy, beyond just what the client's individual problems are. And common problems that we see, you mentioned, a few: scaling local SEO. I was just in Boston, 2 weeks ago, talking to franchise owners about how they can scale local landing pages across 2,000 locations. And other problems are, hey, 10 years ago, we built 300 microsites for, each of these keywords and geographies that we wanted them to rank in. And now, we're convinced that we need to consolidate them. How do we do that in a way that doesn't pass penalties from those domains that we, sort of did some link building on that we shouldn't have, or, done some sort of penalty problem that we don't want passing to our primary domain? And what's the best way to do that redirect? Should we do a soft sort of canonical approach first, or should we just straight 301 redirect every page, or is that too many redirects and going to cause a problem? So there's all of those different scenarios that come into play, depending on, again, where the client's at, what their goals are, and what sort of maybe bad decisions that they had made in the past that put them where they are today. But fundamentally, I mentioned a few of them already. A solid search strategy starts with, that technical audit. And, that technical audit updates about every 3 months. There's some new thing happening. Google just made updates, a few weeks ago, and continuing to make updates. Now there's more rich snippets. There's more ways that we can use the rel equals. There's so many changes and things that happen that append, the current audit template that you use. And I know a lot of SEOs are like, there's no template for, tech. If you're using a template, then you're being too myopic. And as I mentioned, you do need to look at where the problems are and where the individual issues are. But that template audit really does go through a lot of different things that allow you to find the rabbit hole. So I still like to use it. It's evolving and changing, and it makes such a difference. Now ours is a little bit different because most of the time you'll get an audit back and it says this is wrong and this is what you need to do to fix it. And ours, because we're so passionate about teaching our clients how to learn a little bit more about search, is that we include a little video training on the particular topic. Hey, we're going to talk about expertise, authority, trust. So let's do this quick 5 to 10 minute video to give you some background on it and some examples and case studies and where it came from and how it affects you. And here's a link to the Google developer document that talks about this particular attribute. And here's how to rescore if you want to run this audit yourself again later on to create a Delta report down the road. So we try to be very transparent and give as much as we can, as opposed to, sometimes you'll get an audit back and go, you know what, I'm going to need a lot more help on this. And the agency's like, yes, it worked. And then they pull you back in, and now you're kind of stuck working with them. And we don't want to do that. We want to focus on getting through the problems and keeping a client, as long as we can, as a partner, not as sort of I don't want to use the word extortion that a lot of the companies, tend to do. But anyway, so the next audit is that competitive analysis. Where are we kind of side by side with our competitors, and the number and the quality of links coming in? What's our top link bait page that's driving the most organic links to our site? For companies like Applebee's, they have this great Veterans Day page that that drove over 5,000 links to this page. And we found out 2.5 years ago that they had 15 different URLs that they used, and all of them were 404. I'm like, well, this is easy. Let's just redirect those 15 URLs to one permanent URL, and we'll get all those links back. And we did. It was a very easy thing to do, and it was a great initiative that helps the veteran community, and it's the catalyst to new links. Of course, internal linking as well, and looking at how we're linking to certain pages with certain keywords and making sure we're not confusing search engines. Toxic links, those things that might cause a penalty down the road that you might not know a previous agency did, or maybe a competitor doing some negative SEO. So we'll kind of come up with that link strategy of, what do we do with our internal links? What do we do with, those toxic links? Where are the unlinked mentions to our site? Where are our competitors all getting links? You run this intersecting link report across maybe 20 to 50 competitors that are direct competitors of yours, and you go, wow, 10 or 20 of our competitors are all getting links from this one website. That might be a good industry portal. Do some regular advertising and nurture relationships there that might end up resulting in getting us an organic link over time. So we'll kind of put all that together into a link strategy, and every business should be doing this. Then you load up those link opportunities into whatever your favorite CRM is. For us, it's BuzzStream. There's Pitchbox. There's several others that you could use, but our favorite's still BuzzStream. It's just so versatile. It's like working with Play-Doh compared to some of the other platforms that are more like working with Legos. And the last one is probably the most challenging, and my students have the hardest time with this too. And Cal State Fullerton, where I'm teaching now, this is the challenging one, is content, keyword research and content. As you start to do the intersecting keyword audit, similar to how you do in the link audit, to see what are the common keywords that some of these sites are getting traffic from, you have to look at each one and determine what's the user intent of this keyword to decide where it's going to be on the website. And then when you've collected all that data from Search Console, from analytics, and then from those third-party tools, SEMrush or Ahrefs or whatever you happen to be using, you've got to create a site taxonomy or a site map of how that content's going to be organized. Do you put your marketing content in a separate resources directory, or do you put your supportive content underneath its respective page, sales page, to give it more supportive content underneath that sales page? These are all business decisions that the webmaster and the marketing team, and even as high as the CMO, will have to sit down and figure out, how do we want to build our site architecture in a way that's going to really support our SEO strategy? And I would say that's the hardest, because of the time it takes to go through thousands of rows of Excel. No matter how good you are with conditional formatting and so forth, it's still the hardest and longest time constraint on an SEO strategy. Once you have all that together, though, you've got in your hands a strong technical SEO plan with action items that you can load up in your project management system. You've got all of the links that you want to go after, ordered by which ones are going to provide the most value short term. You've got a competitive baseline of where you are now compared to your top competitors, and you've got a content plan that takes into account all of the keywords your competitors are receiving traffic from, and that's converted for you in the past, so that you have a content list that you can build out over the next several 3 to 5 years. And that's to me, that's what really encompasses a strong SEO strategy out the gate. That was a lot. Sorry, I didn't mean to ramble so long, but that was basically.
I was just going to say, Steve, guys and gals, this was 20 years distilled into 5 minutes, 6 minutes of just power information about everything that you need to do. I mean, yes, there's more, and there's different angles and approaches or whatever, but the core of what you mentioned there, Steve, I mean, that's brilliant. That's just beautifully put in this few minutes here, because ultimately each business, as I said, different stages in the life cycle. Each problem is obviously clearly uniquely different. but they all come back to the same thing, which is, like you mentioned, the keywords, the links, the content. You mentioned sales, right? Like conversions, things like that. The CMO himself being involved, not just a webmaster. This is a business decision at many levels,
Really
not
is.
sort of a geeky tech session with a bunch of developers or whatever, right?
Right.
So that really speaks to what you mentioned at the top of the call, which was you need to have a two-sided approach to this, and they both need to work together, not separately. And that's why you have, the notion of sales and marketing are at heads with each other sometimes. But, same thing here. If you can blend it in and work with all the team members rather, and then build out this strategy and everybody's on board, it's very important that, as you know, that it comes from the top, that the sign-offs are made at the critical levels of, executive levels, I should say, rather than just, the database administrator and the web developer or something making choices. So yeah, this is very important. That's why I bring somebody like Steve into your projects to do this, guys. And one of the things that I had on the list, you started about the SEO audit, which was the next one on the list. So that's perfect.
Sure.
But you've seen this. I've come across this, and you get so much spam on this too. It's like, hey, I'll do your SEO audit, and it's a 5-minute tool that just scans, the on-page factors and gives you a little bit here and there, and there's your audit. And I didn't want to ask so much about those tools because that's sort of not super significant to me. But what has changed, would you say, in the last 6, 7, maybe 8 years as you've been doing SEO audits? Is there anything that stands out, or because you hear a lot about this, SEO is dead, and things have
Clickbait.
changed so
That's
much that
clickbait.
you can't keep on top of this, and SEO audits change all the time. But at the core, isn't it about the same as it was 6, 7,
Pretty
10, 20
much.
years ago?
Relevancy, popularity, and user behavior signals, and the pattern of improvement with all three. That's the key component, the pattern of improvement in all three. Am I improving how relevant I am for a query? Am I improving how visible I am off my website? And am I improving how users interact with my content in search results and on my webpage?
Yeah, that's it. I think maybe it was Bruce Clay that said this. You want to always be the least imperfect website or page. It's like you'll never be perfect because by the next day Google has changed something, and things are going to change. But anyway, next question is, how does one, as a webmaster, stay on top of Google's core updates? There's so many updates, and people get scared, and the chatter starts in forums and blogs and groups, and how does one stay on top of that and protect oneself at least as much as possible?
Yeah, if you wanted to see kind of what the sort of temperature is right now with changes, there's a number of different measurement sites where you can kind of see the trend and what's happening. I think Barry Schwartz posted something on Search Engine Journal the other day where he listed all of them out. So after our call, I'll send you an email with a list of the tools that you could use just to kind of see what's happening. Like, hey, I woke up this morning and suddenly my rankings are shifting around. Is there something going on? And you can look at that temperature gauge and say, oh yeah, there's a huge spike in change that's happening with search engines. The other thing that we do, and this is sort of a habit that we have now, is we get in every day and we read about 20 to 30 minutes worth of what's going on in the industry. I have a Feedly URL that I'll provide after the podcast. That you could just import into your Feedly, and it's got it broken down by industry news from Search Engine Land, Search Engine Journal, everything related to search where there's a news site. We've got bucketed in one list, and it reads just like a newspaper would. Below that, I've got some elite SEO, the guys that I really respect and look up to see what they're talking about. And then I've got other buckets for conversion rate, local SEO, and so forth. So that Feedly, getting that daily dose of what's happening in the industry is helpful. The other thing I keep open is my Twitter list on Twitter. I'll listen to what's happening in real time throughout the day. It's a little SEO expert list I have on Twitter, and if you follow that and you watch throughout the day, people are going to be talking. Hey, did anyone notice a thing, or did you notice something happen with such and such, or hey, did you get hit by X? So between the Feedly and that Twitter stream, we're able to sort of keep active with it. Now, if you use Slack, there's an app that will allow you to import RSS feeds. And so one of the things that we do in our announcements channel in Slack, is we import the RSS feed from the Google Webmaster blog and the Bing Webmaster blog. That way, when they do talk about something new, we get it in real time. That helps too.
That's very smart. That's a great one. I haven't used that Slack enough. Yeah, cool. All right, so let me just drill down into a specific example. We talked about local SEO earlier, and we deal with local businesses. There's local business owners on here as well.
Sure.
You know, today in 2019, if somebody is, I'll just use the word struggling with getting to, you know, the local map pack, like there's a map pack, of course, and then there's just local SEO in general. But what would you recommend, I should say, for somebody, you know, 3, 4, 5 things that we should start with to try and get their rankings up in the local maps?
Yeah, locals, it's much faster and much easier than a national campaign for sure. And it's not rocket science. The components of a really strong local SEO strategy or multi-location strategy are going to start with data management. And you know, there's several different data providers that are out there that directories buy their information from or do hygiene on their data from. One of them's going away here. I believe it's Axiom. By the end of the year, that's going to go away. There's Info Group, there's Factual, there's Localese. It's making sure that your business data is maintained and accurate at all times. You can do that through third-party tools like Moz Local. You can manage it through Bright Local. You can manage it through you know, several small platforms if you're a small business. If you're a larger business and you need to manage data at scale, there's Yext, there's Rio SEO, there's a tool called Velocity, there's there's so many of them out there that you could use to manage, you know, thousands of locations and keep that data accurate and synced with your CRM, Salesforce or otherwise. But data, I would say, is at the core. It's the nucleus, and it's the accuracy of that business data and the authenticity of that business data that gets Google to trust that your listing is valid, not just spam. Number 2 is of course your local landing page, which really doesn't help you as much with the map pack as it does with the organic listing below the map for your location. But at the same time, if you're submitting a URL to Google My Business and saying, this is the URL that corresponds to my location, then you'll want to have on that landing page all of the same things that you're inputting into your service fields and your hours and you know, any information that you're putting into Google My Business should be on the landing page that you use in that URL. Some category research would also help. So look at some of the categories that the competition's using. Make sure that you're choosing the category that's the most appropriate for you instead of a broader category that might be a little too off topic for some people who aren't looking for a certain service that you don't offer. I think that local landing page is definitely the priority. Number 3 is going to be the off-page component, right? It's going to be your business listings in industry directories. If you're a lawyer, you're going to be in Justia and Avo and lawyers.com and Fine Law, right? You're going to be in all of those different important legal directories. You're also going to do some hyper-local business listings, so your local chamber of commerce and your city.gov, city.org business directory, anywhere where you can get your business listed locally that might drive new business to your company, as well as you know, provide Googlebot a way to see that data more and more and more often over time. So the business citations are important. And sometimes it's important to break it down. You're like, oh, where do I go? And there's all these different ideas. Start with search engines, right? Make sure you're in Google and Bing and Yahoo. Then you're going to go to your local social, your Yelps and your Facebook, right? To your Foursquare, navigation engines. So here, HERE here. I believe it used to be Nokia. So it's like Nokia here, MapQuest, right? All of the different navigation engines that you need to be in. And then, of course, as I mentioned before, getting into some of those hyper-local and industry. What I'm not really talking about a lot, and I want businesses to stay away from, is some of those general web directories that don't really drive a lot of traffic. I mean, when was the last time you remember going to merchantcircle.com to find anything, right? Or HotFrog or GetFave. We tested by putting some tracking code on the URLs in those, and we got 0 traffic from it. So I wouldn't put a lot of time into those general directories. You know, there's just not a lot of traffic value out of it. They don't get traffic to their sites. They don't get a lot of links to their site. So I wouldn't spend a lot of time there. I'd spend a lot of time on hyperlocal, industry, and then those 3 different other areas. The last part of your local strategy, of course, is business reviews. It's making sure that your ratings and reviews are improving over time. Last week, Google decided to strip out those beautiful stars that we had in our listings. So Yelp and some other directories are still getting those stars, but our stars and our click-through rates are now going to be impacted because we're not going to be able to display them anymore. But it's still important to collect that information. It's still important to display it on your website as social proof. It's still important to collect that so that you own that data instead of giving it all to Yelp and to Google My Business. So I would encourage native first-party reviews still, in addition to continuing to grow and improve your reviews on TripAdvisor, on Google, on your industry review sites. Be careful of asking for reviews on Yelp. Instead, just make sure that there's some prominence. Perhaps point of sale, you've got a little stand that says people love us on Yelp and we love you too. Show us that you checked in on Yelp and get a $5 something, right? So some cool way to get them to check in and interact, and then Yelp will follow up later and say, how was your experience? So you might still get that review just by asking for the check-in. But I think the velocity and the quality of those reviews, and as we mentioned before, the pattern of improvement are all going to play a role. Now, you're not really going to improve the data quality once it's managed. So the 3 areas you're going to focus on every month are improving your local landing page, bounce rates, conversion rates, titles, descriptions, click-through rates, all that kind of stuff. You're going to improve the number of places that your business is listed online every month, and you're going to improve the quality and quantity of ratings and reviews every month. You do those 3 things, and over the next 6 to 12 months, you'll be in great shape.
Yeah, that's great. What an awesome summary. And now let's say for a moment, Steve, that a business has been around for a while. They've done some of this. They obviously will now know what else to do, and they've done this, and they've come to a place where they're actually doing pretty well, but they're going multi-location, right? And so now they have multiple locations, but also they want to not compete page A against page B in a very close proximity area. They might want to simply say, you know what, we want to own like the entire North Hollywood valley and rank for keywords all over the place with independent pages. There's a tool I heard of. It's called Nearby Now. Have you heard of that?
No, I haven't.
Yeah, and what they do is they basically auto-generate pages everywhere, and it's mostly for service businesses where, so if you're a plumber, say, and you're at location, you will give your client an app essentially where they can check in. So they denote on a map that you've been there, and they actually do the review locally. So you get all these local reviews and all these pages everywhere. And for me, it felt sort of black hat, but they are growing and growing. I think they're on the top Inc. list, Inc. 500, the company Nearby Now. And I just wanted to ask you what you think about these strategies of building out just tons and tons of local pages to try and meet these ranking objectives. I think
I'm a huge advocate of building a strong brand, and I don't think you can do that by spreading apart your brand between multiple domain names. So if you're building multiple microsites everywhere, now you have to decide, hey, where am I going to put this blog post at? Do I need to have a social profile for each one and have it associated with each local landing page? I don't know. I feel like you're creating more work for yourself, where instead you could focus on just building up the correlation between your brand and the search terms that you want to rank for. The Barnacle SEO approach, where you're like, hey, maybe I'll do some optimization around my Yelp profiles and get some links to my Yelp profile and send some traffic to my Yelp profile. That's a good way to augment your local SEO strategy. I'm not a huge fan of giving Yelp more traffic, but at the same time, if Yelp is going to continue to appear in the search results, as much as we hate them, we want to make sure it's our profile that appears, or that we're the ones that are at the top of their list, based on how we're using their platform. So you're optimizing in Yelp in the same way if you were an e-commerce business that you'd be optimizing in Amazon. So I would focus on one brand, one domain, and if you want to have a sub page for each location, that's a fantastic idea. It's as long as the page can be as unique as possible with its own attributes and accommodation content, and maybe even some hyperlocal images, storefront images. 360, Google has this great 360 virtual thing that you can do. And they've got a library of certified photographers that'll come in and take a picture inside and outside with that 360 camera. And you're thinking, well, I could just take my Pixel, right, or new iPhone, and I can do my own 360. Well, you can, and it will show up on, on your Google My Business profile. But it's the certified photographers, my understanding, that can post to the actual street view. So in a way, I'm thinking, gee, 360 might be a good way to authenticate your business, since it's a Google certified photographer coming in to do that. So I would focus on ways of improving your content and improving the helpfulness and uniqueness of it through video, through pictures, through user generated content, through creative media, through local events, through things that are really going to build your brand and your trust and your awareness in the community, as opposed to just trying to spam the living hell out of the internet.
Right. Yeah. No, I agree with that. That's what I typically respond with as well. And yeah, that's awesome. We're coming to a close here. A couple of quick questions here. For webmasters in general, what are the sort of 3 to 5 must-have SEO tools? Like, you got to have it in your quiver in terms of keywords, content. We talked about a lot here today, but there are just some essential tools. And now, of course, Google Analytics, Google Search Console, these are 3 tools, and you must have those out the gate. Data, of course, is just where everything emanates from and where you can make decisions. But what are some of the tools that you would recommend? Absolutely, you must have.
Sure, and I'll add on to your list of kind of fundamental, that the tag manager. Get into tag manager. We're not tag manager experts. We like to rank pages, and we're not really as techy on the analytics configuration side. So we partnered with a company called Measure School. You can actually see Julian giving lessons on YouTube if you search for Measure School on YouTube.
Yeah.
Fantastic group of guys. They'll help you set up Data Studio, and they're super affordable. So I would say start with them and get your tag manager and your Data Studio set up with Measure School, so that you can understand the information and attribution a little bit better. Our favorite tools, if you're enterprise, Conductor is fantastic. BrightEdge is great. Search Metrics is great. Clarity SEO is great. If you're smaller business, SEMrush is kind of our favorite tool for kind of end all everything that we're doing for keyword and keyword tracking and share of voice, market share kind of thing. You have to have a crawl tool. The SEMrush crawler is okay, but it does have its limitations, and we have some product enhancement requests out to them. So in the meantime, we're still using a third-party crawler at the moment. It's Ryte, R-Y-T-E. I think it used to be called onpage.org. There's also OnCrawl, there's DeepCrawl, there's some small clientware things that you can get, like SiteBulb, BULB, and Screaming Frog, of course. So those are kind of the heavy lifting. Other tools that you'll use will be the mobile-friendly testing tool by Google. It will be the webpagetest.org. It'll be GT Metrics. It'll be tools.pingdom.com. You might use an extension to disable HTML, or it's called disable HTML, and you can disable JavaScript and CSS and make sure the site's still usable if those things are turned off. There's of course the tag assistant, so that you can verify that all your tags are firing and triggering correctly, which is a great tool to use. Oh, and Lighthouse. Lighthouse is great for looking at your mobile SEO score. I think it's a fantastic tool to use. It's a free browser extension that you could check out. So that's basically the bulk of our tool set. I mean, for link building, we like to run intersect link reports through ahrefs.com. There's a little bit of a way to create a project and do it in SEMrush, but I feel like the link data is a little bit limited there still. So we're still using Ahrefs, to really get a good feel for what's going on the link side of things.
Right. I noticed that's a great list, and I think if you have all those, you're doing pretty well, and understand them, very importantly. And I noticed there was Keywords Everywhere. It's a plugin. I'm sure you've used it. They went to a paid model here just last week or this week, I think, and that's a great tool we use also for quick research. And Ubersuggest with Neil Patel now.
Oh, right. Yeah, Ubersuggest is a little bit different than it used to be, but it's okay. It's still interesting. Content.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and well, this is phenomenal, Steve. It's such a pleasure, and I wanted to just open up a screen here So for you guys that are coming in, you're looking at sort of first dibs and a brand new website, a little different approach than the previous. I know Steve broke this down for me, but talk a little bit about this, Steve, at the end here, and let us know where we can reach you.
Sure. Yeah. So as you know, we talked about a little bit before our podcast today, we are launching a kind of a new brand here soon. And the hope is to provide basically everything that's in our brains about search in template format, in roadmaps. If you're in a certain industry like law or cosmetic surgery, we've already got these pre-built roadmaps to save you some money from having to pay a huge consultancy or agency. We encourage you to try to do everything SEO in-house, and we're going to try to help provide all of the guides and training and templates to allow businesses to do that, and it allows us to scale a little bit beyond just being on phone calls all day. I'm pretty easy to find online. I think my old tagline used to be SEO Steve, so you could pretty much SEO Steve me anywhere. Yeah, so you can find me on Twitter at SEO Steve if you want to ask me questions or get links to things after the podcast. Feel free to reach out there, and then of course our brand social is just our last name, Wiideman. So you can go to Facebook or Twitter /Wiideman and interact with our whole team there.
Well, this is great. I will link that up as well. And is there any parting words or notes, Steve, you'd like to share?
John, this has been great. I'd really love to do this again and maybe talk about a specific topic or silo if you're interested in it. I'd love to keep talking shop with you. It's been fun.
Yeah, no, this has been great, and absolutely, let's do that. And you mentioned from the top, you talked about introvert, extrovert. I mean, I've gotten to know you, of course, over the years a little bit, but now more than ever. And I think I want to sort of end it with that. For anybody who's considering kind of entering into the world of consulting SEO specifically here, there is a lot of technical aspects to this, clearly, but a lot of the great SEOs, guys and gals, who come into this field don't come from the tech world. They come from journalism and writing, and just coming at it from sort of the human element of this, right? And in fact, if you can write and if you know how to think in terms of keywords and content and groupings, categories, theming, topics, there's a lot obviously we've talked about here today, but that can be a great avenue for you to enter into a very exciting SEO world without sort of being bogged down in all the technical stuff. And why don't you just outsource that to somebody like Steve, right? Who can handle that for you. And so now you can partner up. So any final thoughts on that, Steve? Because I think that's
sure. Good. Yeah. And if we can't help, we'll refer you to somebody who can. We're 20 years in, so we know, the industry pretty well. And a little disappointed that I couldn't be at PubCon this week, the big industry conference where everybody's hanging out. But those are all our friends and peers. And if there's some area of search that that we're not good at, and we're not good at everything, we can definitely point you in the right direction.
Beautiful. Well, this is great, Steve. I want to thank you once again for coming on here. We'll talk again soon, and I'm going to close the broadcast. Guys and gals, thank you very much for joining, and
thanks, John.
Have a great rest of the week. All right.